Welcome back to Become a Calm Mama. I'm your host, I'm Darlene Childress, and today I'm going to talk about encouraging boredom. So what I hope is that by the end of this episode, you feel more at peace when you see your kids being bored and dysregulated and frustrated, especially in the summer. The summer is a time where there ought to be less structure and more less loosely supervised free play. That's the idea, right? Long summer days where kids have leisure time, creative time in order to play. And what happens though as a parent during the summer is we don't like the way our kids act when they are bored. Because what happens when a kid is bored is they are what we call dysregulated, which means they're out of balance and they don't know what to do with that discomfort. So I think of boredom really as this period of time between activity. And the better your kid is at managing the discomfort that happens between one thing and the next, from getting up and getting dressed and getting their socks and shoes on to going to camp, and they have an extra hour in the morning, well, isn't that amazing? But if your kids aren't used to having an extra hour in the morning or unstructured time in the afternoon, they aren't going to know what to do with that time, and they're going to start acting out. They're going to start bugging their sibling, complaining, being grumpy, having a big feeling cycle, being naughty. You find them doing something naughty, like they're all of a sudden, coloring on the walls or jumping on the bed or doing stuff where you're like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be doing that. So the problem is that your kids are used to having most of their day filled with structure and with adult-directed activities. So in the last week's episode, I talked about how important it is for our kids to have time to be in free play and be in unstructured play and have time outdoors and have the pacing of life kind of change and all of that. And this is this ideal, right? This value that we have that we want to create more free time and more open, unstructured time. But the obstacle to doing that is your kids' dysregulation in the gap between the thing they were doing and the next thing. So I want you to think about this boredom that you're experiencing with your kids as what I want to call a boredom gap. I want you to be able to think about, okay, my child is in a period of time where they don't know what to do with themselves. Now you as a parent, you're super smart, you're super bright, I know that, and you probably go, oh, you're bored? Let me give you some ideas, right? And that sounds like such a wonderful mom thing to do. I was just reading an article in the New York Times, it's a really great article, and it's all about, handling boredom and that kind of thing. And what they said in there is you want to have these like boredom busters, right? Have a list of things that your kids can do that are the boredom busters. And I love that. I have a list in the summer toolkit, which you can get on my website, calmmamacoaching.com. Under free resources, there's the summer one. You get a whole summer toolkit in there, 80 plus ideas of things to do when you're bored. Now, what happens though, is I've seen this, is that parents will offer a boredom buster or some sort of activity too early, before the brain has gone through its whole feeling cycle and gets to problem solving. So the brain doesn't like to be dysregulated. It doesn't like to be uncomfortable, and it, is going to solve its problem, but it has to feel uncomfortable before it craves something to make it more likely to do that next thing. Let me explain what I mean. Say you're hungry, okay? And your body, of course, wants to satisfy its hunger needs. And you're really hungry, and someone says to you, do you want a bowl of broccoli? Now, some of you are listening. I know you're like super healthy and you're like, oh, I would be like, yeah, yum. But most people and most kids would be like, ew. Now, if I am sitting there and I'm really hungry and I have a plate of brownies and I have a plate of broccoli, I am probably going to pick the brownies, right? I'm going to pick the easy thing. My brain is craving that fast carb, that instant sugar, that big dopamine surge, and it's not thinking about what I can do to take care of myself long term. I just want to relieve the discomfort. And that is true of boredom. So you think you're offering so many wonderful ideas, and you are, but your kid is thinking about what you're offering as broccoli. You're like, why don't we play cards? Why don't we build a tower? Why don't we go outside? Why don't you go look for bugs? Why don't you, get out the twister game? Why don't you play tic-tac-toe with your brother? Why don't you have so many good ideas. You're amazing. But your child, all there is like, eat broccoli, eat broccoli, eat broccoli, eat broccoli. And they're like, no, I don't want to eat broccoli. So you have to wait until your child starts to crave the next thing. And it's a strong enough craving, like they want to satisfy their need and they're willing to work at it, which is what eating broccoli is like, working at it. Creativity is working at it. What do you think your children normally want when they are acting dysregulated because they are in a boredom gap? They want screens, right? They want you to turn on a show or hand them the iPad or give them your phone. And they might have really good like strategies. They're like, let me look something up on Amazon, or I want to play my favorite song, or I want to see what time it is in New York City, or I want to see the weather in New Delhi, right? They're maybe coming up with things. We're like, well, that's educational. Here, I'll hand you my phone, or okay, I'll hand you the iPad. But really, that's a quick fix. That's a brownie. That's a very fast little, pop in to relieve that discomfort, but it's short term. It's not going to leave them satisfying. And then they're going to be on their phone. You're going to have to get it back or stop them and then transition again and go through boredom gap again. So the more time that you give your kids devices and the more time they spend on devices, the more their brain will crave that fast and easy stimulation. It's not going to crave the long-term work of free play. So, what are you supposed to do, right? When your kid is in a boredom gap, I want you to wait, to be comfortable with your child's discomfort. Now, if their kid is being like bugging their sibling or bugging, being disruptive or creating kind of a problem for everybody, you can set a limit around that. You can say, oh, you're welcome to, talk to me and I'll help you with your big feelings as long as you're not hitting your brother, right? So you can set some boundaries and use some limits. There's tons of episodes on this podcast about limit setting, so go back and read some of those. But how to handle the boredom gap in general is we want to wait and be acknowledging what is happening. So that's really what compassion is all about. It's being able to look at your child and think, oh, they don't know what to do with themselves. They're bored. They're dysregulated because they haven't figured out something to do with their brain yet. And I'm not going to suggest anything yet. I'm just going to wait, but I'm going to be compassionate in that waiting. You guys know I love Dr. Dan Siegel, and he coined the phrase, name it to tame it. And really it is about naming what is happening. Sometimes we name that aloud to our kids. Sometimes we just name it for ourselves so that we can get compassionate. So when your kid is just, bugging their brother or complaining or bugging their sister or throwing like randomly, like just picking up a pen and throwing it over and over again or whatever, it's like you can say, oh, I think I know what's happening right now. Is this a boredom gap? It feels like you're in a boredom gap. So you can say that out loud, but most kids will get really mad. So I really want you to be just practicing sort of thinking it. Like, oh, they're in a boredom gap. Oh my gosh. Okay. I can handle this. They're going to find something. They're going to find a solution. Let me redirect. Let me connect. Let me see how I can help them. So when your kids are saying, I'm bored, or they're acting dysregulated, you can connect with them and give them some eye contact and maybe name sort of, are you having a rough time? Is it frustrating right now? You don't know what to do with your big body. You're bugging your sister. You're throwing things. You're, having some trouble. I get it. That's normal. This is called boredom. It's okay. You're going to get through it. So we want to be calm in that dysregulation, be the leader, and really kind of own what is happening and recognize, oh, okay, they're in a dysregulated state. They're in a boredom gap. They're in a place where they don't know what to do, but don't go into solution yet. We need to soothe before we solve. We need to name before we go to now what. So really being present, being like, instead of going, stop it, stop it, stop it, you're being so annoying, or trying to shut down that behavior, or complaining, or arguing with them, or punishing them, we want them to see, like, okay, you're in a period of struggle, and I can help you with that. So once they release some of that stress juice, you can offer now what strategy. Do you need to move move your body? Do you, why don't you come with me? Let me help you. Or why don't you help me? They love to be little helpers. Or, just connecting back with them and giving them some attention. Sometimes boredom is a bid to connect. It's a feeling of loneliness. It's a feeling of frustration. It's a feeling of annoyance. And so your kids, they need a little bit of support, and they need you to give them some words to describe that discomfort. So that's what connection really is. It's helping your child connect what they're feeling to how they're acting, giving them words to talk about what they're feeling. I always think of it as connecting them to them, not connecting you to them, but connecting themselves to themselves. So you're naming it, and you're being compassionate, and then you kind of wait, and then you can say, hey, it's normal to feel bored. That makes sense. I'm sure you'll figure out a solution. So let me know what your ideas are. Or you can say to your kids, hey, it looks like you're looking for something to do. Let me know if you want any suggestions. So what you're doing there is you're inviting your child into some thinking. When they're bored, they're in their limbic center, they're in their emotional center, they just don't feel good, and they don't quite know how to solve for that. And so we're going to access some thinking, getting them towards that prefrontal cortex, giving them some access to doing some problem solving by inviting them in. So don't go right into the solutions. Just say, let me know what you come up with. Let me know what you have, what you think you can do to solve your problem, or let me know if you want any ideas. So you're the guide in that moment. You're comfortable. You're allowing your kid's brain to find its own solution. You're trusting that your kid is going to figure it out. Now, how long is the boredom gap? How long should you wait? What to expect? It really depends on how often your child has experienced boredom. The more your kids are bored, the more unstructured things, unstructured time, or unstructured activities that they experience, the better they get at overcoming and moving quickly through the boredom gap. When their brain is trained in that, like last week I talked about discover mode versus defend mode. Discover mode is about going, what can I do to make this more interesting for me? That's the kind of problem solver we want. That's the kind of thinker we want. That's the kind of kid we want to be raising, right? One that's like, I can solve my problems. I don't have to feel uncomfortable and bored. I don't have to wait for my parent to solve it for me. I don't have to wait for my parent to become a clown and entertain me. It's like, I can entertain myself. That's so much more powerful, and there's so much more self-agency in that process if your child is comfortable with their own discomfort and can trust that they can figure out a solution. So it's like every time that you have, not every time, I don't want to be super extreme and hyperbolic, but like the more that your kids are on screens in gaps, the more they rely on technology to fulfill their creative and need for free play. The more that you take the screen off of the table as an option, the better your kids get at finding in real world, embodied, big body movement, creative activities, things like that to solve for their own discomfort. The brain hates to be bored and it hates to find solutions. It wants the easiest and fastest way to do it. And so your brain is going to crave technology. Your brain is going to crave sweets, right? It wants the most efficient and effective way to get its needs met. And when you take some of those options off the table, the brain has to work harder, but it's better for it. Isn't that kind of cool? So like the more screen-free breaks you create, the easier it will be for your kids to shift from this restless protest to creative exploration. There is going to be resistance. There's going to be protest. I want you to allow for some of that discomfort. Be compassionate and trust that your child is their natural inborn need for fun and for play and for learning and for exploring and discovering and creativity. It will come out if you allow it, if you trust it, if you wait. Now, that initial boredom, once your kids get over that feeling, right, they can learn to prevent it by finding activities that are meaningful to them. So once they kind of learn how to walk through that boredom, they're like, oh, I don't want to feel that again. I'm just going to keep finding fun stuff for myself to do. And they can learn to keep themselves busy. We want our kids to become resilient, right? We want them to have grit. We want them to be able to overcome difficult emotions. We want them to be imaginative. We want them to be creative, right? We want them to be problem solvers. We want them to have confidence, right? We want all of these things. And that is the way we get that is by letting them find their own solutions and not giving them so much structure and so many activities and so much going on that they don't get to practice this boredom and this discomfort. Let me think, I answered the question a few minutes ago about like how much time should you allow? And the truth is like what I've noticed about parents, particularly in the summer, but even in the school year, is that the activities are not stacked back to back, but there's like these weird gap periods of time. Like you have, 30 minutes or 45 minutes between one thing before you have to get ready and leave for the next thing. And your kids are not in the relaxed, open, exploration, discover mode. They're in like a transition, like I only have, a little bit of time between now and the next thing. And they may not want to get involved in something because there is this idea that they know they have to leave soon. And so if your kids aren't going to be allowed enough time to get into an activity and then stay in that activity and then enjoy it, they may not be committed to trying. So if that's the case and you've already got your schedule going, then that means that you need to have a little plan of what they're going to do during that period of time so they don't get dysregulated and ask for screens or sweets or bug their sibling. That's a bid for connection. So instead, you need to be thinking like, okay, when we get back from camp, they have, karate or jujitsu at 4, we get home at 3, we need to leave at 3:45. So I think I'll have like quiet reading time. Or I'm going to put out, coloring books. I'm going to have them do some chores. Like have a little plan in place and then you will just tell them, nope, we're not doing screens. This is what we're doing. And, take it or leave it, especially if it's not chores. You can do these chores now or you can do it when we get back. That kind of limit setting. But knowing that you might need to create an adult-led activity if you don't have enough time for them to get into something. Think about yourself. Like, imagine, like this always happened to me, is that I would have my morning, I drop the kids off, do my morning stuff, run errands, whatever, work and all that. And then I would get to like 1:30 or 2, and I would know I needed to go leave soon for pickup. And I would then decide, oh, I can't really get into anything right now. And I would feel a little restless, and I might even waste that time on my phone. And for me, one of my ways of entertaining myself is with reading novels. And so I just kind of created a little lifestyle for myself that the 30 minutes before I left to go do pickup, I had this luxury, is that I would read my book, whatever fiction book I was reading. Sometimes I would drive to school early, and I would sit if it was not too hot, or I would just sit at my house. I literally sat and read my book. Or sometimes I would watch a show because I would be like, well, I'm not going to be able to watch a show tonight until like 9, and I want to relax and I want to have a good time. So I'm going to sit here and watch a show, which is not, I'm going to talk more about screens next week, but obviously I'm not a little kid where I'm getting my dopamine and all that all the time from screens, right? Because I have a big life. So it can be a television show if you want it to be, but I would encourage that if you do use screens, that they are in a communal environment and everyone is watching the same thing on the big TV, not individual devices where everyone is separated. So that way there's still some community aspect and some problem solving of what we're going to watch and all of that together. So there's some benefits. If you are going to do screen, there's a lot of benefits to doing it as a community. So, but I just wanted you to notice for yourself, like sometimes you're bored, sometimes you're restless, you don't know what to do with yourself. And you might find yourself scrolling on Instagram or something like that, or reading the news or Twitter or whatever you do. And that might be your sugar, like your quick fix. And maybe there's something more enriching that you could do if you didn't have access to screens. What would you do? Maybe you would, look up, everything I think about is like looking up stuff. But maybe you would pet your dog or go for a walk or do some stretching or, I don't know, whatever task you might do or activity that you might do. Think about how you struggle in that moment. That's what I want you to connect with, is like that restless feeling you have when you're not sure what to do and you don't want to get into something because you don't have a lot of time. That's kind of how your kids feel sometimes. So when they're in that dysregulated state and you can tell it's because they are bored, I want you to really be thinking, okay, they're bored, they're in a boredom gap, this is not a problem. You can offer them some compassion for their feelings. You can be like, I get it, it's hard, you don't know what to do with yourself, that's normal. And you want to like bug your brother, or you want to bug your sister, or you want to bug me, or you want to bug the dog. That makes sense. That doesn't work. So you either need to figure out what you're going to do, or I can help you. So what do you want to do? Do you want some help? Do you want some ideas? And then you wait and see if they're ready for some ideas. And then you say, well, why don't you, play a puzzle, whatever the ideas are that you have. So like I said, I have a toolkit on my website, the summer toolkit, and has 80 plus boredom busters. And it kind of describes this boredom gap and the step-by-step directions of how to handle a boredom gap. So I highly encourage you get your toolkit, go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get that link and download that toolkit. If you already have it, go back and remember this section and read through those boredom gap busters and get some ideas, and then follow the steps of naming it, being compassionate, and then asking if they want some support. All right. I want you to remember that once your child moves through the boredom gap, on the other side of that is fun, it's play, it's creativity, it's learning with their bodies, it's practicing gross motor movement, it's practicing fine motor, it's sitting and learning something. It's actually very enjoyable on the other side. So if you as the parent, if you don't allow for that boredom, you don't allow for that discomfort, your kids, they don't get the experience of free and imaginative play. They don't learn that they have an innate love of nature or sports or art or just that pleasure they have of relaxing and reading a book or petting the dog or staring out the window and looking at how the wind and the birds come through. There's so much value to boredom. Think about your own childhood. Think about thinking about car rides before we had any devices and how like you sit in the car and you watch the trees go by and it feels like the trees are moving and you're staying still. You know that feeling when you're just staring and the trees are like, doo, 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 and you're like, oh, am I moving or are the trees moving? Like, that's such a beautiful reflection. It's like so little kid-like, right? Just staring and going, huh, that color green is different than that color green. Oh, look, there's a bird. Huh, oh, is it windy outside? And then getting into that discover mode and going outside and feeling, oh, it's so hot. Oh, look, there's a bug. And then looking at the bug and then picking up the bug and then wondering if ladybugs have babies and having a whole conversation with yourself about ladybugs. That is childhood. And it does not happen on an iPad. It does not happen in an episode of Bluey. You might watch Bluey having those experiences, but that's not the same as you going in your own yard and finding your own friend to play with and figuring it out for yourself. So I hope that you see that there will be a gap between where the brain knows what it's supposed to be doing or is engaged to the next thing. That's a boredom gap. It's normal. Allow for it. Be okay with that uncomfortableness. Don't go to a solution yet. Be compassionate and wait. Wait for your kid's brain to crave it. They will, because that's what it's like to be a human child. It's super cool. Okay, if you want help with this, like for reals, like you're like, okay, darling, I've been listening to your podcast and I love it. And also I don't quite know how to do anything you ever say. Then I think I get it because I feel the same way sometimes about stuff I'm learning. Just reach out, book a consultation. I have a free 25-minute complimentary consultation with me. I have them, scheduled like lots of times where you can pop into my calendar and we'll just meet. You can talk to me in person. I'll tell you about my programs. I'll tell you about working with me, or I'll just kind of listen and get to know you. It's really lovely. I love these conversations so much. And so do that. calmmamacoaching.com, go to programs, scroll down, schedule a consultation with me, and let's get to know each other. Okay, if you're listening to this the day it comes out, happy 4th of July. And I hope you are in your summer mode and having a good time and that you have lots and lots and lots of free, unstructured time for yourself and for your kids. All right, mamas, I will talk to you next week. Hey, mama, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do 2 things. The first is go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get a copy of the Stop Yelling cheat sheet. You'll get a step-by-step breakdown of the most important tool I teach, which is the pause break. And you'll also get 40 ideas to reset your body and balance your nervous system so you don't have to yell at your kids. You can get a copy of that, again, at my website, calmmamacoaching.com/stop yelling. The other thing I'd love for you to do is go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast so that other moms can discover empowering and helpful, practical parenting strategies, just like you did today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to be in your ear every week and to support you on your parenting journey.